I spent 70 years being invisible, a quiet shadow in a world that only remembered me when it needed something. But the day I won the lottery, something else happened. Something no one knows about. A truth so dangerous that if my son and daughter-in-law had discovered it earlier, they wouldn't have just tried to steal my freedom. They might have tried to erase me completely. Before I reveal that truth, let me tell you how it all began. My name is Marta James, and I am 70 years old. If you drove down Oak Ridge Road in Brookfield, Georgia, a quiet road lined with cracked pavements and leaning mailboxes, you might have passed my house without ever noticing it. Most people did. A fading white porch, peeling blue shutters, and a roof that coughed every time the wind blew, that was the place I had called home for nearly 4 decades. People say old age softens you. But mine hardened me, not into bitterness, but into silence. Silence was the only thing my life had ever given me in surplus. I wasn't always alone. Once, this house held laughter, warm coffee, the deep rumbling voice of my husband Charles, and the tiny footsteps of my baby boy Calvin. But the world has a cruel way of shrinking when you grow older. One day you're a mother, and years later you're nothing more than a reminder of responsibilities no one wants. After Charles died, the house seemed to exhale all at once, a long tired sigh, and after that everything went still. Calvin and Alicia, my son and daughter-in-law, had visited once, maybe twice, after the funeral. They offered rehearsed condolences, tapped shoulders, promised they would check on me soon, and then disappeared into their new life in Atlanta. A life where my existence didn't fit. I remember the day Alicia said the words I've never forgotten. "Mom, living with us just isn't practical. You understand, right?" Practical. As if I were a broken chair taking up space in their hallway. And Calvin didn't even look at me. He stared past me, like acknowledging me was an inconvenience. That day, I nodded quietly and watched them drive away, their taillights glowing a soft red in the dusk. I stood on the porch long after the engine faded, holding onto the railing not because I was weak, but because something inside me was trembling too hard. The years that followed were slow, empty, and painfully predictable. Every morning I woke up before the sun, because in a house like mine, silence is loudest at dawn. I clipped coupons until my fingers cramped, counted pennies in small glass jars, ate whatever was cheapest. Winter froze my bones, summer drenched me in sweat. But still I survived, maybe because survival was the only thing I had practiced my whole life. And even then, I never allowed the bitterness to swallow me. I still cooked my meals, watered my plants, polished Charles's old watch every Sunday. I still believed, foolishly, that Calvin might one day knock on my door simply because he missed his mother. But that day never came. Not until money entered the picture. Before the lottery, I lived unnoticed, unvalued, and painfully alone. But little did I know the world had been watching me more closely than I realized. Not with eyes, but with intentions. And the moment I accidentally picked up that bright orange Megadraw ticket from the convenience store counter, my life, and the real danger began. But back then, I had no idea. To me, it was nothing more than a silly impulse, a moment of boredom, a dollar spent out of routine. I didn't know the truth hidden behind that ticket. I didn't know what it would drag into my life. I didn't know what I would lose, what I would fight, and what I would discover. Not only about my son, but about myself. And I certainly didn't know that one day soon, I would be sitting in a courtroom, exposing the very people I once called family. But that comes later. For now, the story begins with a single moment. The moment I learned that the world does not ignore you when you're rich. It hunts you. And someone else was hunting me long before Calvin and Alicia even knew. The moment everything changed in my life didn't arrive with fireworks or angels or any kind of grand sign. It came quietly, softly, hidden inside an ordinary Thursday morning that smelled of warm pavement and old coffee. I had walked to Benny's Corner Mart like I always did. My grocery list was small: the cheapest bread, discounted milk, and maybe, if I had enough coupons, a can of soup. I counted coins in my pocket while pushing open the door, the bell chiming above me like a sound I'd heard 10,000 times. Nothing in that store suggested that fate was about to tap me on the shoulder. But then I saw it. A fresh stack of bright orange Megadraw lottery tickets sitting behind the counter. Brand new. Clean edges. The kind that look like hope printed on cheap glossy paper. The cashier, barely out of high school, glanced at me with a grin. "Feeling lucky today, Miss Marta?" Lucky. I almost smiled at the absurdity. Luck wasn't a visitor in houses like mine. Luck belonged to people with retirement plans and working heaters and children who called just to say hello. Still, something nudged me. A quiet, foolish impulse. Maybe it was loneliness. Maybe boredom. Maybe a tiny part of me that still believed life could surprise me. "One ticket," I said, sliding a single dollar across the counter. I didn't even bother checking the numbers. When I reached home, I tossed the ticket onto the kitchen table beside my salt shaker, the one Charles bought me the year Calvin was born. Then I folded laundry, swept the porch, and went on with my day as though nothing had happened. 3 days later, life nudged me again, but this time, it shoved hard. Just before sunset, I heard the faint whisper of paper sliding across my floor. I assumed it was a flyer or a bill. But when I picked it up, a strange heaviness pressed through the envelope. It had no return address. No stamp. Just my name typed in all capital letters, Marta James. My heart gave a small, uneasy flutter. I opened it slowly. One sheet of paper. Bright white. Just a few lines of text. And in those lines, my world cracked open. "Congratulations. You are the confirmed winner of the $2,700,000 Georgia Megadraw jackpot." I stared so long that the letters began to float. The room tilted in and out of focus. I gripped the table to steady myself. For a moment, I thought I might faint right onto the faded linoleum floor. $2,700,000. Me. The woman who counted pennies to buy bread. My first emotion should have been joy. But joy never came. What came was fear. Because money is louder than grief, deeper than blood, and sharper than betrayal. It changes people long before it touches their hands. I didn't need to imagine how Calvin and Alicia would react. I already knew. A son who couldn't be bothered to call. A daughter-in-law who treated me like charity. People like that don't come running back for love. They come running back for opportunity. I folded the letter with shaking hands and locked it in my kitchen drawer beneath a pile of old takeout menus. I told myself no one had to know. If I stayed quiet, if I kept my head down, everything would stay peaceful. But peace has a short shelf life in a world where secrets travel faster than truth. What I didn't realize then was that someone had already found out. Someone who had been paying attention far more closely than my own child. Someone whose shadow had already fallen across my porch before the sun even set that evening. And that person, the one keeping an eye on me long before the money arrived, was about to step into my life in a way I never expected. I didn't know it then. But silence wasn't going to protect me. Silence was going to drag me straight into the storm. When I woke up the next morning, the world felt strangely heavier, as if someone had quietly placed a weight on my shoulders while I slept. The letter, the one that could change everything, was still locked inside my kitchen drawer, buried under old greasy menus and expired coupons. I didn't touch it. I didn't dare. I just stared at that drawer while sipping my weak instant coffee, feeling its presence like a heartbeat pulsing through the wood. Every few minutes, a thought would rise in my mind like steam from a boiling pot. What am I supposed to do with this kind of money? Who do I tell? Who do I trust? I had no answers. Only a tightening in my chest. Around noon, I stepped outside to sweep the porch the way I always did. Routine keeps you sane, especially when your world has suddenly tilted. The air was warm, heavy with the scent of pine and distant barbecue. A normal Georgia afternoon. But something felt off. Across the street, Mrs. Henderson, who barely acknowledged me on her best days, was suddenly staring at me with a smile so wide it looked painful. She waved, an enthusiastic, almost desperate wave, as though we'd been childhood friends. I lifted my hand halfway, confused. A man I'd never seen before slowed his truck as he drove past, looking at my house with unusual interest. His eyes followed me longer than felt comfortable. Two teenagers stopped laughing the moment I stepped out, whispering behind their hands while staring straight at me. The neighborhood felt different. Like everyone knew something I didn't want them to know. When I went back inside, I locked the door. Something I never used to do during daylight. An hour later, I heard footsteps on my porch. Slow. Heavy. Deliberate. My body stiffened. No one visited me, not without calling first. And certainly not without reason. I peered through the thin slit of my front curtains. No one was there. Just an empty porch and the warm breeze. I exhaled shakily. But as I turned away, I heard it, a faint click, like someone testing the doorknob from the outside. My stomach dropped. I didn't move. Didn't breathe. I waited, counting the seconds. Then nothing. Silence again. But the kind that feels alive. I backed away from the door, my heart thudding against my ribs like someone knocking from inside. Later that afternoon, I opened my mailbox. Inside was only one thing. A thin, folded piece of paper. No envelope. No signature. No explanation. Just one sentence. People know more than you think. For a long moment, I couldn't move. The paper trembled between my fingers. My first thought was Calvin, but no, he didn't even know about the ticket. Not yet. And Alicia? She had no reason to reach out. Not after years of silence. This wasn't from them. This felt different. Sharper. Closer. Someone was watching me. Someone who knew a secret I had told no one. As the sun began to set, the fear inside me cooled into something else. Something harder, stronger. A quiet determination rose in my chest. If someone was watching me, I needed to protect myself. If someone knew about the money, I needed to prepare. And if someone was planning something, I needed to be one step ahead. That night, I barely slept. Every sound outside felt too close, the rustle of leaves, the creak of wood, the distant rumble of cars. It all pressed against my nerves like cold fingers. At 3 a.m., I finally got up and turned on the kitchen light. I opened the drawer, pulled out the letter, and stared at the words again. $2,700,000. Enough money to start a new life. Enough money to destroy one. As I stood there, gripping the edge of the counter, I knew one thing for certain. This secret wouldn't stay buried for long. Not in a neighborhood suddenly full of eyes and whispers. Not with someone leaving warnings in my mailbox. And not with a son who would smell opportunity the moment it drifted anywhere near him. Trouble was coming. I could feel it in my bones. But I had no idea just how close it really was. And how soon the storm would arrive, not from strangers, but from my own blood. 2 days later, I was in the kitchen cutting sweet potatoes for dinner when my phone lit up on the counter. I didn't need to look at the screen. My heart recognized the vibration pattern before my eyes did. Calvin. My son. My only child. The same man who hadn't called me in 11 months, 4 days and, yes, I counted, 3 hours. I froze, knife hovering mid-air. He never called. Not unless he needed something. Not unless Alicia pushed him. Not unless life cornered him badly enough that he had to circle back to the one place he believed would always say yes. My mind raced. Had someone told him? Had the rumor already crawled its way into their living room? The phone rang again. And again. On the fourth ring, I finally answered. Ma. His voice was warm. Too warm. The kind of sweetness you use when you're talking to someone holding something valuable. I didn't respond right away. I let the silence stretch just enough to make him repeat himself. You there, Ma? Yes, I said finally, my tone flat. He chuckled softly. Well, look at that, you picked up. I was starting to think you'd blocked my number. I hadn't. But I considered it many times. How you doing? He asked, voice dipped in honey. I'm fine, I said, keeping my words clipped. Why are you calling? A brief pause. Oh, come on, Ma, he said lightly. Can't a son check in on his mother? A strange thing happened then. Something inside me, something old and tired, tightened like a knot being pulled. Because I remembered the last real conversation we had. Me calling him during a winter storm, asking if he could help shovel the snow piled against my porch steps. And him sighing loudly before saying, Ma, I can't keep running over there every time something goes wrong. You gotta learn to handle stuff on your own. I had handled it. With numb fingers and an aching back. Now, suddenly, he cared. What do you want, Calvin? I asked, leaving no space for him to dance around the truth. Another pause. Another smile I could hear through the phone. Well, he began, stretching the word like taffy, Alicia and I were thinking of coming to see you this weekend. You know, spend some time. Maybe catch up. My grip on the phone tightened. They never came to catch up. They barely came for Thanksgiving. They didn't even show up after my hip surgery. And now they wanted to visit? I stayed quiet long enough for him to fill the silence with his own guilt. You still there, Ma? I'm here, I said. So, yeah, he continued, we'll bring dinner. And dessert. Maybe help you with a few things around the house. Help. That word again. The same word people use right before they take something. My eyes drifted to the kitchen drawer where the winning letter was hidden. I could almost feel the heat of it radiating through the wood. When will you be here? I asked, my voice calm. Saturday, he said quickly. Too quickly. Afternoon. And Ma. Yes. I've been thinking about you a lot lately. Really. I wanted to laugh. Or cry. Or both. Instead, I said, all right. See you then. When I hung up, the kitchen felt colder. Because something was confirmed now. A quiet truth I wished wasn't true. Someone told them. And they were coming for the money. That night, the house felt too small for my thoughts. I walked from room to room, touching the old wooden door frames, the faded wallpaper, the picture of Harold and me on our first anniversary, smiling like two people who believed the world would always be kind. I sat on the edge of my bed, my hands resting on my knees. A knock echoed in my mind, the memory of someone testing my doorknob days earlier. Was it Calvin? Alicia? Someone they sent? Was I already being watched? I barely slept. Every sound felt suspicious. Every shadow looked like a warning. On Saturday morning, I woke early, cleaned the living room, and made cornbread, the kind Calvin used to love when he was little. Not because I wanted to. Because I wanted everything to look normal. At exactly 2:17 p.m., gravel crunched in the driveway. Their silver SUV pulled in like a shark gliding toward its prey. Alicia stepped out first, hair styled, makeup flawless, smile bright enough to blind. She carried a bouquet of flowers she probably bought on sale that morning. Calvin followed, wearing a new shirt, shoulders straight, chest out, confidence thick enough to smell. They looked like a couple visiting a rich old aunt. Not a mother they had abandoned in an aging house. I opened the door before they knocked. "Ma." Alicia beamed, arms spread wide. "You look wonderful." Her hug was too tight, too sweet. Calvin kissed my cheek. "Good to see you, Mama." I stepped back and let them inside. The house suddenly felt too small, too full, too watched. Alicia looked at the walls, the furniture, the faded curtains. Not with love. With calculation. Calvin walked around slowly, his eyes scanning the hallway, the drawers, the corners. Like a man looking for something hidden. My heart moved in slow, heavy beats. They hadn't even sat down yet, and I already knew. They weren't here to reconnect. They weren't here because they missed me. They weren't here because they cared. They were here because they smelled money. And I was the only thing standing between them and it. Calvin and Alicia settled into my living room like they owned it. Alicia placing her purse gently on my coffee table, Calvin stretching his legs out on my ottoman as if he'd paid the mortgage for the last 30 years. I sat across from them, hands folded in my lap, steadying my breath. For a moment, no one spoke. The silence stretched thin and sharp, like a thread pulled tight enough to snap. Calvin cleared his throat first. "House feels smaller than I remember," he said casually, glancing around. "It hasn't changed," I replied. He nodded, fake nostalgia coating his voice. "Yeah. Guess it's been a while since we visited." Alicia jumped in quickly, too quickly. "Oh, don't say it like that, Calvin. We've been meaning to come. Life just gets busy, you know how it is, Mama Marta." I didn't respond to the lie. Calvin leaned forward like a man preparing for a negotiation. "So, Ma, how've you been? Everything okay? Nothing unusual going on?" "Unusual." He was sniffing around the edges of the truth, trying not to look too eager. "I'm fine," I said. "Been managing my own business like I always have." He forced a warm smile. "That's good. That's really good." Alicia reached out and patted my knee like I was a child telling a story she didn't quite believe. "Well, we're here now. You don't have to worry about anything anymore." Something in me stiffened. "I wasn't worried," I said softly. Another silence. This one heavier, colder. Calvin shifted, pulling something from inside his jacket. A folder, thicker than it needed to be, edges sharp, papers already organized. My breath slowed. Here it was. "Ma," he began, his voice dipped in syrup, "Alicia and I were talking. And we just want to make sure you're protected. You know, with everything going on in the world these days." Protected. Another word people use when they want to control you. He slid the folder across the table toward me. It stopped just inches from my fingers. Alicia smiled too wide. "It's just some paperwork," she said lightly. "Simple things. Helpful things." I didn't touch it. "Not yet." "What kind of paperwork?" I asked quietly. Calvin sat up straighter, ready to deliver his pitch. "Well," he said, opening the folder, "first we have a general financial management form. It just authorizes me to handle any large transactions for you, you know, so you don't get scammed." He flipped to the next page. "And this one," he continued, "is a joint account document. This way, we can keep an eye on things, make sure nothing goes wrong." Another flip. "And this is just a preliminary estate protection outline. It basically keeps everything safe and efficient, so when, you know, later down the road, we won't have to deal with a lot of legal trouble." I felt the room tilt for a moment. My son, my blood, had walked into my home with the audacity to hand me my own erasure. "Why now?" I asked softly. Alicia didn't blink. "Because we care." I looked at her. Really looked at her. Her eyes didn't show care. They showed hunger. Calvin added, "Ma, this is for your own good. You live alone. You're getting older. It's not safe to be dealing with things by yourself anymore." My voice stayed calm. I've been dealing with things by myself for a long time. He didn't like that. He leaned in, lowering his voice to sound authoritative. "Ma, let's not pretend everything is perfect." Alicia jumped in, shaking her head sympathetically. "We just don't want something to happen. Like you forget a payment, or misplace something, or misunderstand something. You know, people your age." People your age. There it was. The quiet knife hidden under a blanket of concern. I finally reached out. I didn't take the folder, but I placed my hand on top of it. Their eyes sharpened. Both of them. Like animals sensing a kill. I opened it slowly. The first page was exactly what Calvin described. The second page transferred full access to all my accounts for my safety. The third, buried halfway through the stack, was the real dagger. It granted Calvin successor authority over all assets, including recent financial acquisitions. Recent. Meaning the money. I placed the papers back on the table and pushed the folder toward them. "I'm not signing," I said. Their smiles cracked. Like glass hitting the floor. Alicia blinked fast. "What do you mean?" I repeated, "I'm not signing anything." Calvin's jaw tightened. "Ma, don't make this difficult." Difficult. The word people use when they're used to you obeying. "Calvin," I said quietly, "you didn't come here to help me. You came here for money you think I have." He didn't deny it. He couldn't. "Who told you?" I asked. Alicia's lips parted, but she said nothing. Her eyes flicked away, guilt flashing like lightning. Calvin exhaled sharply, the mask slipping. "Does it matter who told me? What matters is you need us now." "I've needed you for years," I said. His silence confirmed everything. Every absence, every excuse, every cold dismissal. Alicia leaned forward, voice trembling with fake concern. "Mama Marta, you don't understand how dangerous it is to handle these things alone. People could take advantage of you." I looked at both of them. "Oh, Alicia," I said softly, "they already are." They froze, caught, exposed. Calvin stood abruptly. "Fine," he snapped. "If you won't trust us, then don't blame us when something bad happens." Threat. Clear as day. Alicia grabbed her purse, avoiding my eyes. They walked to the door, frustration twisting their faces into something ugly. Before stepping outside, Calvin turned back. "You can't hide money, Ma," he said coldly. "Not from the people who deserve it." And then they left. The gravel outside crackled under their tires as they sped away. I stood in the doorway long after their car disappeared down the road. The sun dipped behind the trees, shadows stretching across my porch like long fingers. I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. Because I finally understood. My own child was willing to steal from me. And if I didn't prepare myself, he would. He would take everything. Including me. That night, I didn't sleep. Not for a single minute. I made tea, but the cup sat untouched. I turned on the lamp, but shadows clung to the corners of my living room like they were waiting for a cue. The silence inside my house felt different, too tight, too watchful. As if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Calvin's words kept echoing through my mind. "You can't hide money, Ma. Not from the people who deserve it." People who deserve it. As if blood alone granted entitlement. As if abandonment meant nothing. As if love was optional but inheritance was guaranteed. I sat on my couch, hands trembling slightly, staring at the folder he'd left behind. He must have forgotten it in his anger, or maybe he expected I'd change my mind by morning. But I didn't. Instead, something inside me, something old and buried, began to rise. Not fear. Not sadness. Resolve. I stood, walked to the hallway closet, and pulled out my dusty laptop. It groaned when I opened it, the screen flickering twice before settling into a dim glow. I hadn't used it in years, not since Harold passed. But tonight, I needed answers. I typed slowly, searching. How to protect yourself from adult children trying to take financial control. Signs of attempted elder exploitation. Conservatorship laws, Georgia. I read for hours. My stomach tightened with every article. Because I realized something terrifying. Calvin and Alicia didn't just want access to my money. They wanted control of my life. Every decision. Every account. Every property. Even my medical choices. A legal leash disguised as concern. People like them didn't need weapons. They used paperwork. Around 5:20 a.m., the sky still dark outside my window, I found something that made my heart thud hard against my ribs. Elder law attorney, defense against conservatorship abuse. A woman named Danielle Wright, ex-prosecutor, now specializing in protecting seniors from family financial manipulation. I stared at her number. I whispered to myself, I'm not going down without a fight. By 7 a.m., I called. She answered on the second ring. Danielle Wright speaking. Her voice was sharp, like a match being struck. I swallowed. My name is Marta James, and I think my son is trying to steal my life. There was no shock in her silence. No surprise. Just readiness. Tell me everything, she said. And I did. I told her about the sudden visit. The fake kindness. The paperwork. The threats tucked between smiles. The rumor spreading before truth did. The way Alicia looked at my walls like she was imagining new paint colors. Danielle listened without interrupting. When I finished, she exhaled slowly. You're not crazy, she said. And you're not alone. This happens far more often than people admit. Her words hit me like a warm blanket. She continued, the first step is to gather evidence. Every message. Every visit. Every document. Every suspicious event. A chill ran through me. Suspicious events. My mind flicked back, to the slight scraping sound outside my porch 2 nights ago, to the feeling that someone had been near my window, to the mysterious envelope that had no stamp, to the shadow moving past my gate when I took the trash out. Had someone been watching me? Tracking me? Searching for proof of the money? Danielle kept talking. Do exactly as you've been doing. Stay calm. Don't confront them. Let them think you're unsure. People like your son push harder when they believe you're weak. That's when they make mistakes. Something in me straightened, my spine, my breath, my heart. What do I do now? I asked. You prepare for war, she said simply. Quietly. Since they want control, you record their attempts. You save everything. And Marta, her voice softened, don't let them see you coming. She emailed me a secure folder to upload evidence into. I created an account. I started documenting. Every voicemail. Every message. Every word. By noon, I felt like a soldier sharpening a blade. I cleaned my house top to bottom, not for them, but for me. A clean home made me feel steady. Grounded. Ready. Around 4 p.m., my phone buzzed again. A text from Calvin. Hey Ma. Hope you're feeling clearer today. We left some things behind. Mind if we stop by tonight? Clearer. Meaning, more cooperative. More vulnerable. More willing to sign away everything I owned. I typed back slowly. Sure. Come by. Danielle had told me to gather evidence. So that's what I intended to do. But when the sun began to set and pale gold light washed through my curtains, another message appeared. This one from an unknown number. At first, I didn't want to open it. My finger hovered above the screen. But some instincts don't need permission. I tapped. A single sentence stared up at me. They're not coming to talk this time. My blood ran cold. I straightened, staring at the door, at the darkening windows, at the endless quiet stretching through my house. Someone out there knew something. Someone was watching. Someone understood the danger more deeply than I realized. I typed back quickly. Who is this? No response. Not a word. The house felt suddenly smaller, darker, too still. The warning wasn't unclear. Calvin and Alicia were coming. But not for a conversation. Not for reconciliation. Not for family. Tonight was going to be different. Tonight, the real intentions would start to unfold. And I, a 70-year-old woman who'd been underestimated her whole life, tightened my jaw, straightened my back, and whispered into the empty room. Let them try. By the time the sky outside had turned from pale orange to bruised purple, my house felt like a stage waiting for a performance no one asked to watch. I moved slowly, testing every lock on every window, softly, quietly, making sure each one clicked into place without echoing through the room. My heart wasn't racing. Not anymore. It was steady, like it finally understood the rhythm of survival. I placed my phone on the counter, camera already set to record. I adjusted the small motion-activated device Danielle helped me order earlier that afternoon. It was tucked behind the vase on the bookshelf, impossible to spot unless you knew it was there. Evidence is armor. Evidence is safety. Evidence is the voice they can't silence. At exactly 8:13 p.m., headlights washed across my living room wall. Bright. Slow. Intentional. I didn't move. A car door shut. Then another. Footsteps, the familiar shuffle of Calvin's heavy stride and Alicia's quick, impatient tap-tap heels, made their way up my porch. A knock. Not gentle. Not polite. Sharp. Demanding. I stayed seated. Another knock. Ma, open the door, Calvin called, voice stiff, not even pretending concern this time. I inhaled deeply, walked to the door, and cracked it open just enough to see their faces. Both looked different tonight. Edges sharper. Smiles gone. Patience emptied. Evening, I said lightly, as though I didn't already feel a storm gathering in my hallway. Alicia pushed forward, her tone coated in the kind of forced sweetness that could rot wood. We just stopped by to grab that folder we left, she said. And to make sure you're okay. Right. The folder. The one filled with legal chains. Well, I replied, opening the door a little wider, come in then. They stepped inside with the confidence of people who believed nothing could touch them. Calvin glanced around the room, eyes darting like he was searching for something. Did you move anything around? He asked suddenly. No, I said evenly. Everything is right where it should be. Alicia sat on the couch, crossing her legs, shoulders tight. So, how was your day? She didn't care. She wasn't here for small talk. She was here for leverage. Peaceful, I said. Quiet. Calvin cut in abruptly, impatience dripping from every word. Ma, where's the folder? My tone didn't change. Why do you need it? His eyes hardened. Because those documents are important. To you, I corrected softly. Alicia straightened. Mama Marta, please. We just want to help. I raised my hand, stopping her words mid-sentence. Let's not pretend you're here because you care. You're here because you think I have money. Calvin opened his mouth to argue, but for the first time, I saw something flicker across his face. Guilt, fear, or maybe anger that I hadn't fallen into line the way he expected. "You told someone," I said quietly. "Who was it?" Alicia's jaw tightened. "We didn't tell anyone. People talk. Word gets out. There's nothing wrong with making sure you're protected." Protected. Again, that word. Calvin stepped closer, voice low and firm. "Ma, listen. If you don't handle this right, you could lose everything. People could scam you. They could manipulate you. They could take advantage of you." My pulse thudded once hard. "And what," I asked softly, "are you doing right now?" He didn't answer. He didn't need to. Instead, he reached into his jacket and pulled out. Not a folder. Not a pen. But a stack of new papers, freshly printed, clipped neatly together. Different documents. More aggressive ones. Alicia slid closer, her voice a whisper wrapped in sugar and poison. "These will just give us temporary oversight until everything is sorted out. It's normal. It's for your safety." I took a step back, not out of fear, but to see them clearly. To see exactly who they had become. Calvin placed the papers on my coffee table with a thud. "We're not leaving until you sign these." My house felt smaller. The air thicker. Their shadows taller. For a moment, I didn't speak. I wanted to choose my words correctly. Words that wouldn't tremble, words that wouldn't crack. And then, quietly, calmly, I said, "No." Alicia's head snapped up. Calvin's jaw clenched so tight I heard his teeth grind. "What did you say?" he demanded. I said no. I'm not signing anything. Not today. Not ever. Alicia stood abruptly. "You're being irrational." "No," I corrected, "I'm being sane. Clear. Aware." Calvin stepped toward me, too close. "We're trying to protect you," he said sharply. I met his eyes, steady. "From who?" "Because the only danger standing in this room right now is you." A beat of silence. Alicia whispered, "Calvin, let's just go. This isn't." "No," he snapped at her. "She's not thinking straight. This is exactly what I was afraid of." He turned back to me. "You don't get it, Ma. If you don't let us take care of things, we'll have no choice but to involve people who can. People who'll make sure everything is handled correctly." My chest tightened, not with fear, but with the clarity of understanding. They were threatening legal action. Conservatorship. Control. Ownership. Alicia looked at the floor as if ashamed, but not enough to stop. "You're going to lose everything," Calvin added. "Unless you trust us." I straightened my shoulders, letting every year of my life anchor me to the ground under my feet. "I trusted you once," I said. "I won't make that mistake again." He opened his mouth to argue, but a sound from outside froze all three of us. A car door. Then another. Voices, quiet, low, unfamiliar, approaching my porch. Calvin frowned. "Who's that?" I felt something rise in my chest, not fear this time. Relief. Because I knew exactly who it was. Evidence isn't just armor. Sometimes it's an army. There was a loud knock on the door. Firm. Authoritative. Not like Calvin's earlier pounding. Alicia whispered, "Calvin. Who did you call?" Calvin shook his head. "No one." I stepped toward the door slowly. My hand didn't shake this time. I opened it with calm certainty. Standing on my porch were two uniformed officers, a clipboard in one hand, a sealed envelope in the other. "Evening, Miss James," one of them said. "We need to speak with you." Calvin went pale. Alicia's breath caught. "And me?" I only smiled. Because this moment, was where the storm finally met the woman it thought it could drown. The taller officer stepped inside first, his boots echoing across my wooden floor. The other followed, closing the door behind him with a slow, deliberate click. That sound alone made Calvin flinch and Alicia's breath stutter in her chest. "Miss James," the officer said, "we received a formal request involving concerns about your well-being. We'd like to ask you a few questions." I didn't react. I didn't panic. Because I knew exactly what this was. Calvin's voice shot up like a spark hitting dry grass. "Officers, there's been a misunderstanding." "Sir," the officer cut him off sharply, "we'll speak with you in a moment." Alicia grabbed Calvin's arm, whispering something urgent into his ear. His jaw tightened. His nose flared. But he stayed quiet. The officer turned to me. "Ma'am, this paperwork states that your son and daughter-in-law have expressed concern about your mental and financial capacity. That you may be experiencing confusion, forgetfulness, or being taken advantage of." Alicia lowered her eyes as if embarrassed on my behalf. Calvin kept his chin high, waiting for the moment the officers would turn on me. But they didn't. Because I wasn't the one trembling. Not tonight. The officer lifted the envelope. "Miss James, do you consent to speak with us alone?" Behind me, Calvin stepped forward. "She doesn't need to." The second officer raised a hand. "Sir, step back." Calvin did. I nodded calmly. "Yes, I'll speak with you." We moved to the dining room. I sat in my chair, the same one Harold used to sit in for breakfast, and folded my hands in my lap. The officer leaned forward slightly. "Miss James, do you understand why we're here?" "Yes," I said. "My son believes I should hand him control of my life." He blinked. "Your life." "My finances, my home, my decisions. He and his wife are trying to obtain conservatorship without cause." The officer exchanged a look with his partner. "Do you feel unsafe, Miss James?" I took a long breath. "Yes. But not because of strangers. Because of family." The officer paused. "And are you aware of the reports made about you?" I lifted my chin. "I'm aware of the lies." He nodded slowly. "And do you have evidence supporting your claim that this is coercion?" I reached into the drawer beside me and pulled out the small USB drive Danielle told me to prepare. I placed it on the table with absolute calm. "Everything is here," I said. "Recordings, messages, documents they tried to make me sign." The officers looked at the USB. Then at me. Then at Calvin pacing in the living room like a trapped animal. "Miss James," the officer said, "may I ask who advised you to gather all this?" I smiled softly. "A lawyer. Mine." His eyebrows lifted slightly, impressed. "Danielle Wright?" he asked. I nodded. He exhaled. "Then you're in good hands." We walked back into the living room. The air had changed, thick with tension, anticipation, fear. The officers stood beside me. "Mr. James," the taller one said, "we need to speak with you and your wife privately." Calvin stepped forward, talking fast. "Look, officers, you don't understand. My mother is confused. She's—" "No," I said, cutting through his sentence like a blade through cloth. "Stop talking for me." His head snapped toward me as if he'd been slapped. I continued. "I'm 70 years old, not fragile, not confused, not incapable. You abandoned me when I needed you. And now you're here because you think I'm an easy target." Alicia swallowed hard, eyes darting to the officers. I took one step closer to them both. "You came into my home tonight to pressure me. To scare me. To force me to sign papers you knew would strip away everything I have. That isn't love. That isn't protection. That is exploitation. Calvin shook his head violently. That's not true. Then why did you bring new paperwork? I asked quietly. Stronger paperwork. More aggressive paperwork. He froze. Alicia closed her eyes. The officers exchanged a look, one that didn't need words. The taller officer stepped forward. Mr. James, Mrs. James, he said, voice firm, you need to come with us. Alicia gasped. Are we being arrested? Not at this time, he said. But based on Ms. James's evidence, the complaint you filed is now under investigation for fraudulent intent. Calvin sputtered. This is insane. She's lying. The officer didn't flinch. Sir, everything she has said tonight is consistent with elder financial exploitation. And since she has documented proof, we need to speak with you both at the station. Alicia grabbed her purse with shaking hands. Calvin pointed at me, rage twisting his face. You think this ends here? You think? The officer stepped between us. That's enough. They escorted them outside. The gravel groaned under their feet, the same way it had when they first pulled up. Except this time, there were no fake smiles. No sweet greetings. No pretend affection. When the door closed behind them, silence filled the house. Not fearful silence. Calm silence. Earned silence. I stood alone in my living room, feeling my spine straighten, my breath deepen, my heart settle. The storm had broken, and I was still standing. 2 hours later, there was a knock on my door again. This one gentle. Measured. When I opened it, Danielle stood there. Hair pulled back, briefcase in hand, eyes sharp with purpose. I heard, she said softly. I didn't expect them tonight, I replied. Danielle smiled. People who want power rarely wait. She stepped inside and closed the door behind her. Miss James, she said, I need you to sit. We have paperwork to file before sunrise. By morning, you will be legally protected from any further attempts. They won't be able to touch your finances, your home, or your decisions ever again. I sat, feeling a weight lift off my bones that I didn't even know I'd been carrying. With your permission, she continued, we'll also pursue charges. What they try to do is a crime. For a moment, I stared at the table. Then I shook my head. No charges, I said quietly. Not yet. I want peace first. Justice later. Danielle nodded, understanding immediately. You're strong, she whispered. Stronger than I thought, I replied. We signed documents. We filed protections. By the time she left, the sky was turning pale, and the birds had begun their morning songs. I sat on my porch as the sun rose, gold soft warm. For the first time in years, I wasn't afraid of who might show up. Because I had shown up, for myself. Later that afternoon, I drove 2 hours to a small community center in a quiet town I'd visited once long ago. I walked inside, asked to see the director, and handed him a check for $250,000. For programs, I said. For women like me. For women who survived things nobody knows about. The director stared at the check in disbelief. You're sure? He asked. I smiled. Absolutely. Because I didn't win money. I won freedom. And I wasn't going to let greed take it from me. I drove home with the windows down, wind in my hair, humming the same song Harold used to play when the world felt too heavy. When I pulled into my driveway, my porch light flickered gently, a soft reminder that I was still here. Still standing. Still choosing. And for the first time in a long time, I felt something close to joy.